Hey everyone, welcome back to the Scale Trains YouTube channel. It's Drayton here. I'm joined by my good friend and product developer, Chris Brimley, and we're here to talk to you guys today about the all-new Rivet Counter HO Scale Gunderson 3250 two-bay covered hopper. So stay tuned. So this is a exciting announcement for us. It's being announced at Train Fest in Milwaukee. We're excited to be back at Train Fest. And for me personally, I love these cars. They're really neat to look at. I call them cute, and everyone makes fun of me here for saying that. But they're cute. They're like a full-size Gunderson. They just been shrunk.
They're fun-size candy.
Fun size. That's a great way of describing them. And I'm really excited to talk about them, Chris, because this is your first all-new freight car that you've done here at Scale Trains.
Yeah, it was the first that I developed, but not the first that was announced and released. So there was others that kind of leapfrogged it, and so I'm excited for this one to finally come out now.
Yeah, and it's important too for the customer to know. You know, when we decide on a new project, it takes years, 3 to 2 years, before you ever see production samples from the day that a project is decided upon. And Chris can tell you way more about the product development cycle than I can, but I know that there is so many hours of research that's poured into these models to get that Rivet Counter brand standard down, railroad road number, and era-specific detail. And just looking at these cars from the roof down, you can tell immediately how much work went into these. So let's kind of talk about the history of this car, Chris, get people a little bit more familiarized. There are similar two bays out there in the real world and in the HO scale marketplace. So what makes this one different?
So this is the version that Gunderson built. There are other versions that are out there made by Trinity and ARI. Those are kind of the major ones that you'll see out on the rails today of the two bay. You also see some of the older versions that were built, from the 70s and the 80s that are still on the rails as well, that were built by anything from Pullman Standard to ACF. And you'll see them sometimes mixed in, but sometimes you'll see them very dedicated of just the Trinities or just the Gundersons together. And so a lot of times they're intermixed with each other.
Gotcha. And so is this like an early 2000s car, or?
Yeah. So the version of these cars, the earliest ones were built at the beginning of the early 2000s, and then you had the fracking industry just take off and go crazy in the early 2000s. So a lot of these were purchased in massive quantities to carry frac sand, but frac sand wasn't their only commodity that these cars could be in. Basically, any aggregate that would cube out in a larger car that's a heavier weight, so it needs to be in a smaller car. And so you would see these in anything from concrete to the aggregate used to make asphalt shingles to fertilizers, all sorts of different types of commodities like that. And when they were using frac sand service, which they still are today, just not as prevalent, I mean, you'd see these in unit trains of just these little two-bay cars, and they're fascinating to see.
Yeah, I remember being trackside on the NS Chicago line 10 years ago and just seeing like literally just hundreds of these things on a train, empty, going west, headed toward, the oil fields out in the Dakotas. And they were, used that you'd see them a lot in that kind of service. So neat to see them in person. And then, here in Tennessee, limestone is a big industry down here. And I've learned so much over the years about the limestone industry, because there's a company here called Loas North America that uses a fleet of similar cars. And you would be amazed all the things that limestone is used for, from pharmaceuticals to, like you said earlier, roof shingles, chemical compounds, and different things like that. And so I think people kind of have this idea that when you see one of these two bays, oh, that's a sand hopper. But that's not true. It just really depends on the industry, and they can haul, like you said, all kinds of different commodities. And the reason why they're two bay, from what I understand, is because sand and other items like limestone are heavier
Yeah.
than grain, so you have to have a smaller car.
Yeah, if you would take just like a traditional grain hopper, something that was like a 4427 or a 4750, you would what's called cube out the car, which you wouldn't even be able to get close to filling the car because of the weight. You would hit max weight long before filling it, and so it's just too big of a car for those heavier aggregates and commodities. So you just need a smaller car to handle those as well.
Well, and it makes sense too, because like some of the loading facilities that I've seen, like I've been out in Utah and Nevada, and I've seen different places where they load these cars. Track, because of the terrain, is confined in a lot of these places, so their yard or loading tracks are rather short. And so I would assume, having a shorter car like that, you could ship a lot more product. So, and also probably a lot better on bridges too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So cool to see these here. So Chris, let's kind of talk through some of the road names and paint schemes and detail variations. Let's start on your end. I've noticed a lot of these have an X on the end, which would signify that they're leasing service cars. Is that correct?
Yeah, the majority of them were owned by private owners or put in lease service.
And this one here that's closest to you, it has 4 hatches, and the rest that I'm looking at have 3 hatches. Why is that?
Yeah, so the earliest built cars built by Gunderson, they tested doing them in both a 3 or a 4 hatch version, and only the earliest of cars came in the 4 hatch version. It was quickly abandoned, and everything later was just a 3 hatch version. And so this is the GBRX cars are as early as they come with these. And so what you would see is not only the 4 hatches, the rope poles on the cars are kind of inset and mounted to the bolster, whereas all later cars are mounted to the side sill of the cars. And so you would also start to see other differences beyond just the roof hatch versions. Most of the earlier generation cars throughout the first about 10 years that they were built came with a 10-post running boards on the cars. Whereas later versions, they slightly lowered the height and then also went to a 9-post version. And then there's a lot of other variations. So when this project was given to me, as Drayton mentioned, it was my first project at Scale Trains. And so it was mostly just given to me as a basic car to kind of find my footing within the ways that Scale Trains developed cars. So it was given to me as basically a short 2-bay version of the Gunderson 5188, which we also have and offer. As I come to find out through the development of this is a much more complicated car than we expected. And just in body variations, I was able to identify 7 different body variations.
Wow.
And then you start to get in all the variations of the roof hatches, which we identified 3 30-inch roof hatch styles. There's 2-hinge fiberglass, 2-hinge steel, and then a single hinge steel. And then also on the outlet gates, we found 4 different outlet gates made by ATP and Miner. And they have just kind of a general purpose version from both vendors, and then also a really low profile version as well.
Very, very cool. And the different paint scheme variations here are neat. I like the CSX version that has the red grab irons there on the top. That's a neat. You don't really see red grab irons.
No, CSX does that on their cars, on their covered hoppers, which I think is kind of neat looking instead of the more traditional yellow.
That is cool. And I remember seeing a lot of the Union Pacific cars out west when I visited Nevada about 10 years ago. So it's cool that we're offering Union Pacific. The one here on the far left, though, this one was a fertilizer car?
Yeah, it's a fertilizer company called Keg River. And Keg River had acquired 3, there may have been more that they acquired, but 3 of the cars they acquired from AOKX. They added a unique lettering to each side of the car. So on one side you have the Nutrisol, and then the other side you have Supreme, yeah. And then what's interesting is there's the 3 cars, but it's not consistent on what side they did it. So on one car, you'd have Nutrisol on the left side of the car, And then another road number, we discovered that they put the Nutrasol on the right side of the car, and then it switches with the Supreme as well. So it's a really interesting little thing that we like to add in to kind of spice up the offerings a bit.
Yeah, definitely. And so there's a wide variety here. Like you said, you've got fertilizer, and then the other cars you can use for various different purposes. Now, you mentioned earlier unit trains way back in the day, but today these are used in blocks, like 10, 12.
Yeah.
Cars.
You'll see them most commonly today just in blocks in your manifest trains. You can see them as singles or as blocks, and it's still just fascinating to see them just kind of peppered in and occupying pretty much most of your modern manifest trains today.
Yeah, I saw. I was mentioning to Chris off camera that I saw quite a few of these CSX cars not too far from us in Etowah, Tennessee, which is pretty neat. So anywhere and everywhere it seems on Class 1s and
all over the place, all over. Yeah.
Cool. Well, these cars are available for pre-order now. You can click the link in the video description to place your pre-orders. We also have an N-scale version that we're announcing here today. Same road names, Chris?
For the most part. In N-scale, we're doing pretty much all the same road numbers except for GBRX, because we're not going to do the 4-hatch version in N-scale. The 4-hatch versions were pretty uncommon, but we decided to still go ahead and offer them in HO, but in N, we're just going to do the 3-hatch versions. Gotcha. So no GBRX.
Okay, cool. So there you have it. HO and N-scale, an all-new Rivet Counter freight car. They're even cuter in N-scale.
They are.
I must say. So make sure you click those links in the video description to place your pre-order today from scaletrains.com. Chris, thanks so much for joining me here to talk about this car. I'm really excited for it. I'm going to add some to my layout. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to get notifications. All right, we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.